Good evening. Welcome to Money Matters. I'm Charlie Shields, Wells Fargo Advisors, LLC. My co-host is Patricia Dunn of Merrill Lynch. Patricia, how you doing?
Good to see you again.
So good to see you. We got an entrepreneurial story to tell you about tonight. Our special guest is Tom Giacoponello, CEO of Baby Life Seed Incorporated, and I think he's got a wonderful product, and we want to teach you something about it and so you can get the full story. So to get started, let's talk a little bit about stocks and bonds and commodities. Oil prices have been coming down. Gold's been coming down. It was 1900. It's coming down through 1200. I want to remind our viewers and listeners not to time any market decisions. We're not lawyers. We're not accountants. We try to help people for long-term investments. So what do you think oil and gold are telling us, Pat?
I think it's telling us that things are going to be improving for consumers in general, and that your consumer discretionary stocks will be doing well. I think it's also could potentially be a boost for the healthcare industry, because if less dollars are going out at the gas pump, more dollars can be used in other areas. So I think we're going to see a definite boost in consumer related issues.
I agree with you. I'll make one other kind of geopolitical comment. It's kind of interesting to me that the Saudis are helping to keep oil prices down, and I suspect what's going on in the Middle East has got them pretty concerned that they've dug a hole for themselves, and I think they've begun to realize if they can keep oil prices down somewhat, that will be a problem for the Russians, which is a positive for the world. It might be a problem for ISIS trying to take over some oil fields. So I think we've got a lot of positive things working for us together. As far as the gold is concerned, it wouldn't surprise me if it goes a little lower, but the time will come we're going to have to reverse our interest rates and as the economy recovers, and we'll see how gold reacts if we're too slow to raise those short-term rates. What do you think about that?
I agree with you completely. That is just around the corner. That's the next shoe to drop, is to see our interest rates start going up. And then I think you're going to be seeing a lot of changes, very positive for the stock market.
Okay. Well, you hear a lot of people say there's no inflation out there. Maybe there is with food and there was with energy, but now there's not. But I think we've had some stock market inflation. We've had the Federal Reserve intentionally pushing long-term interest rates down, keeping short-term rates extremely low, and trying to force people into the stock market. You agree with that?
I think so, but I don't think their intention was to force them into the stock market. I think the intention originally was to boost the economy and to hopefully generate more jobs.
Yeah.
But the uncertainty around all of it has left all your corporate executives scratching their heads saying, is it safe to start hiring a bunch of more people? So I don't think it's worked. But what has worked is, I hope it's brought more people into the stock market.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings us into the next subject I was going to talk about, regulations. I think part of the reason that the Fed was pumping all of this money into the economy, as you said, was to get the entire economy going. But at the same time, all these thousands of pages of regulations were coming in. Mm-hmm. So therefore, corporations were slow to spend the money. So therefore, all this money's been pouring into stocks and bonds and driving unbelievable gains. I never dreamed that we'd be seeing a 3% 10-year bond and a 3 3/4 30-year bond, and the stock market has gone way more than doubling since 2009, yeah. And yet Main Street isn't feeling it, right?
No, Main Street is not seeing it at all. And you know the old phrase, Charlie, bull markets are born on pessimism. And we seem to have an awful lot of pessimism, and yet at the same time we have an awful lot of pieces in place that would lead to better markets to come.
Yeah, and we do seem to see some good sprouts for the spring type of thing. The unemployment rate is down. Mm-hmm. A lot of people had left the workforce. Possibility they'll come back into the workforce as they see that the economy really is recovering. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I'm concerned about is that as people see the economy is recovering and they come into the job market, there's going to be a demand for higher wages for the skilled people, and so we could start seeing some inflation pop up suddenly. Do you see it that way?
Definitely, because the jobs that we have created, on the most part, are for unskilled labor. We've had plenty of road repair work done and other things that do not require skilled labor. But as the skilled labor comes back, yes, there is going to be a demand for higher prices. And I think what will be the catalyst for all of that, and that I'm hoping has come out of this midterm elections that we've been through, is that maybe now Congress will finally get their arms around the fact that we need some tax reform, particularly in the arena of corporate tax. The corporate tax rate in the United States is the highest tax rate in the entire world. Not just the advanced countries, it's the entire world. And if we can bring down that corporate tax rate, we can not only attract money that's captured overseas back here, but we may be able to attract foreign investment here, and that's what's going to lead to more skilled jobs.
Along those lines, the Republicans, the market has done the best when the Republicans have the House and the Senate, and the White House is in Democrat hands. Historically, that's the way it's worked. And because of the way a lot of the red or Republican states were the ones where the elections were held this time, 2 years from now, the states that are where most of the senatorial elections are in Democrat hands. So I think that Republicans may realize they have a 2-year window to try to make some things happen, and I think you're exactly right. If they pick a few subjects like the corporate tax rate, like the XL pipeline, things that are popular with both parties, maybe they can show that the country's getting going again, and I think that would really improve the morale of everyone.
I absolutely agree.
All right. Well, let's talk about trouble in the Mideast. I alluded to it a little earlier. We've got this ISIS mess on our hands. Libya, we're not sure about. A lot of places that have oil, and yet in a few years, I guess we're going to be energy independent. So do you think that trouble in the Mideast is going to be a long-term problem for the markets, or do you think it's going to be a short-term problem and we'll be able to work through that? What's your opinion?
My opinion actually is that we're going to be able to work through it. We have had some absolutely horrible events. When you start cutting people's heads off, and these are good and innocent people that you're doing this to, and the market held strong, I believe we're just going to work our way through it. And I think the fact that America is working its own way towards not only being energy independent, but actually at some point being a net exporter of energy, I think that it makes us less subject to the whims of what's going on in the Mideast.
Good point. And as I alluded to earlier, maybe the market is realizing that the Saudis and some of the powerful nations, Kuwait, have come to a realization they can't be feeding terrorists money with one hand and talking a good game with us with the other. Maybe what these evil people are doing has gotten the Saudis' attention and the Kuwaitis and the Emirates. So that might be another positive for the long run, even though in the short term this is pretty scary stuff.
It would be so nice if they would solve their own problems.
Hear, hear. Okay, well, let's try to help one of our viewers. Ralph Walters of Villanova says, what are your thoughts on the bond market?
Actually, Charlie, my thoughts on the bond market right now are quite negative. I was a financial advisor back in the late 70s and early 80s when we saw interest rates rise dramatically. And so I have firsthand experience with how when interest rates go up, bond prices go down. But I also have firsthand experience, having been through 2 bear markets in a single decade, that bonds have been where many investors have fled for safety, perceived safety, keyword being perceived. And I think the next shoe to drop is when bond rates start declining. Interest rates start rising and bond prices start falling. And if they've learned anything from the late 70s and early 80s, they will know to get out.
I recall a conversation. My wife had a friend come over to our house. I was still in the Navy at the time. She had gotten a divorce, and her broker put her all in 30-year government bonds.
Ouch.
And she was terrorized. She said, my broker tells me that my bonds are only worth half of what I paid for them. That can't possibly be. rates were at 16%, risen from 8 to 16%. And I said, well, who's going to take when they can get 16 now, who's going to pay you full value for your 8% bond? And I said, just tough it out, clip your 8% coupon, and you'll be okay in a few years, but you missed a much better window. I still get Christmas cards from her for not selling those, but
Good.
The point is I want to make sure people realize if you have a rate rise from 3.5 to 5% on 30-year bonds, your bonds are going to be dramatically slashed in value.
Yes.
All right, well, thanks for that good answer. We're going to put up some information now. If you have a question that you want to send in.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
Okay, let's get to the really fun part of the show. Tom Giacoponello, thanks for being with us.
No, you're very welcome.
Okay,
Very welcome.
well, we're real interested in hearing your story. I know you were an entrepreneur, and now you have focused full-time on this safe baby seat. Tell us about how all that got started and where you are now in that process.
Well, it started with a college buddy of mine. A number of years ago, we would boat in Long Island Sound, and people would tie up boats and then just pass babies from one boat to the next wherever the barbecue grill was.
Scary.
And it was scary. And so I just barked out, Pete, why don't you come up with something? And he was just a brilliant guy, pharmacist by training. And he started working on it. And he said, Tom, this is fantastic. I'm calling the Coast Guard. We did it. And not knowing what he was doing, he took a simple car seat and put a bunch of flotation material on it and thought he had the next greatest thing. Well, the Coast Guard responded very affirmatively but negatively to what he had done. They said, there are many, many hoops to jump through to meet standards that have been set so that this is a safety device. And guess what? There is none. We have a void in products for babies.
Yeah.
We require a life jacket on boats for every individual. Mm-hmm. On an airplane, there has to be some kind of flotation for every passenger. But we don't make mention of it for babies. In fact, we recommend you don't take a baby on a boat.
Yeah.
If you go to the Coast Guard website, it still says that.
Sure.
And so they brought us down, took a whiteboard and easel and started saying, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. We went back, and it was about 8 or 9 prototypes before we got to the first few. And we did testing at Under Ours Laboratories, and we passed the testing finally on the third go-around. And
this must have been years going by.
Well, yeah, it was a healthy period of time.
Yeah.
And then I was working to provide the money because Pete was ski instructor at Mount Snow. Pete lived a very good life.
He was the idea guy.
Yeah, but he was brilliant. He was a brilliant guy. And I had 2 little kids at home that I was raising as a single parent, so I had to keep my eye on the ball. And sadly, what happened was Pete passed away. So the baby life seat, between the economy and Pete passing away, it was only until a year ago that I picked this up to begin doing something as my daughter exited graduate school.
Okay.
So that's where I am now.
Well, let me take you back a step, because I understand that you had a very successful career as a recruiter, and this is what provided the money.
Yes.
To get this off the ground. So you went from a business where you were quite successful to a business that was fraught with a lot of risk, What was the motivating factor to have you take that plunge?
That is a great question. It's a great question. And I think every entrepreneur who has run his credit cards to the maximum, remortgaged his home, took his cash value dollars out of his life insurance policies, and spent his kids' education money, has asked himself, why am I doing this? It's not just that you think you're going to make, money doesn't come into it at all. It's the idea that you've been given a gift. You get passionate about the fact that when you say, I have a product which is going to save a baby's life, and there is no product now protecting those babies. And then you see floods in the Philippines and tsunamis in Japan, and you say, gee, what I'm doing will save maybe thousands of those babies, just the thought of it. So even to save one life, it's a tremendous gift. And then the response also that I get fuels my energy when people say to me, I love it. I love the idea of what you're doing with this, and or the additional features you're putting into it.
Well, I have to agree, as a soon-to-be first grandmother who loves to sail, I'm very excited about this.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, suppose you were on Shark Tank and Mr. Wonderful said to you, in 1 minute, tell me why this thing is better than anything else and what's different about it.
Well, I think the answer is relatively simple. Just looking at the picture of it, the baby life seat is a car seat which you would have in your car, which then you could take and put on a plane, and it would meet the legal requirements for a flotation device for every passenger on a plane. So it meets that legal standard. And then you could take it off the plane and put it on Grandma and Grandpa's boat, and it's now meeting legal requirements as a flotation device for this very precious passenger.
I understand you
On the
have a
boat.
video of this. Could we just run that now it's about a 20 or 30 second video?
Sure. Yeah. Maybe they
Okay,
could do
let's
that.
go ahead and roll that, and then
As a
we'll
life-saving aid
continue
for
the
babies.
discussion.
Or PFD. So, just like every adult would have a life jacket, the baby
This
life
is some
seat
of
would
the
be
testing
the best
they did
constructed
at
life
Underwriters
seat that is also
Laboratories,
your baby's life jacket
and,
for
you can
airplane
imagine
and
why.
watercraft travel.
My anxiety
We need your
level
help
went
to
up.
finish the
What
final
had it taken
engineering
so
and
long to build
retesting
was
for
being thrown
certification.
from a 10-foot pool.
Once that is accomplished, we
With
intend
the
to offer
baby
the
in it.
baby
That's a
life
real
seat to
baby,
parents around
and
the world
the
with
beauty
an
of it
optional
is that
GPS locator
it
so that
spins
worried parents
around
will always
in
know
under
who
2
is our
seconds.
child.
Wow.
So they had
It's constructed to survive
stopwatches on it,
Will
and
also
that was
be
the
safest and best constructed
That reminds me of the Dilbert Dunker as an aviator. When you're learning how to get out of an airplane crashing in the water, they had a device that would run us into the water and flip us over, and then you had to wait till the dust settled and then get out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about your competitors. Do you have any competitors?
In the automotive marketplace, of course, every car seat manufacturer has been holding on to their share of that marketplace, and I'm certain they want to continue to do so, which is why I think when I can finally get to the right people, it would be my thought that they would want to license the baby life seat, since basically what's been new in the car seat business has been that they may cover it with a nicer fabric, or it might beep when you do something. But now here's a product which takes a car seat and moves it across all travel modes and keeps that baby safe. And I think the car seat manufacturers will be possibly competitors. I don't know that they would want to be. I wouldn't want them to be, but they could be competitors. But then in the marine and aviation markets, there would relatively be no competition to speak of.
Well, maybe you would end up getting a royalty from Ford and General Motors when they use your patented seat. Have you thought about that at all? Have you approached them?
It's going to sound silly, but the only way to get to General Motors is to send a fax. I actually did,
Okay.
to the then product head new product head, a woman named Mary Barra.
Oh, I've heard of her.
Oh, yeah.
Well, she's CEO. And what I was told to call 1 week later. I called 1 week later. Now, this is me alone. I don't have a team.
Yeah.
I don't have anyone helping me. So I called, and the lady who answered the phone for General Motors,
Yeah.
this big organization, says, I know who you are.
Oh, my
I
God.
saw it come out of the fax machine. I think it's wonderful. Wait, let me call her secretary.
Oh,
She came back with this positive feedback. Ms. Barra thinks it's a great idea, but she doesn't have a budget. She has to send it to all the division presidents.
Oh, yeah, the bureaucracy.
So my heart just
yeah.
sank, because if you're running a division of GM, you're looking for a product that's going to enhance a car. You're looking for a carburetor that's
Sure.
Yes.
going to do something. But at least I got a little bit
Your
close.
entrepreneurial instincts kicked in there to
Yeah.
try to get something done. And how much of this is your past experience helping you to go somewhere with the right sense of direction, and how much is just trial and error and making a bunch of mistakes and starting over again?
Well, sometimes you feel that life has prepared you for this. I feel that this is just a pivotal moment for me. I feel my whole life has prepared me for this, because I've never really had a paycheck. Came out of college, and I talked too much. I was one of those kids in school. I spent my first 2 years in high school in detention until I got it.
Yeah.
Be quiet. So when I came out, I ended up selling insurance for 15 years in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Moved down here and started in executive search. All of this on straight commission. So when you're working in executive search, you have to get those 99 no's in order to get to a yes.
Yeah.
I'm about at 87, 88.
Wow.
So I've had a lot of no's, but it doesn't faze me. The energy is there.
Well, I like to assume success. So tell me, from a young mother, a grandmother, why do you think they will want to buy it? What are you going to key into that is a need that this is going to address?
Well, I think even more than the fact that it may meet laws in the aviation and marine market, I think what every mother is looking for is a product that speaks to her.
Mm-hmm.
So to take the time and the effort to add additional features into it. Now, not all of that has been fully worked out, but I think to look on the news and see that a car seat was left in a car and the baby dies from exposure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, put a Bluetooth focused heat sensor in it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm probably giving away IP, but that's the point. Make a product that really says this is the safest possible product, considers the fact that you have to carry this car seat around, make it easier for the mother to carry it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of those features are there to be built into this next generation of infant carrier.
Yeah.
So that safety becomes the key issue.
Sure. As a Navy pilot for 26 years, when I get on an airplane and I see babies in the laps of mothers, this makes no sense to me when I think about what kind of impact there is in crashes, and yet I don't believe there's any regulations yet that insist a child be strapped in, or so what gives with that? How do you get that change? That's only common sense that should be changed.
Well, the American Academy of Pediatrics is a pretty vocal organization, and they have been saying for the longest time, as have other nonprofit organizations, that there are so many regulations for a coffee pot on a plane, but there are none for a baby.
For babies.
And about a year ago, they crashed a plane, if you remember, in the desert, and put cameras all over it to see what would happen. And one of the cameras was focused on a dummy that had an infant, and sure enough, at 300 miles an hour or so, the upper torso would crush the child.
Sure.
And I share your horror. I got on a plane once, and they said we have additional buckles that you could strap the baby to you. Well, that makes no sense either. And then if you're only holding the baby and there's turbulence, which is probably the greatest cause of injury to infants on airplanes, you can't hold on to them. You turn away and the plane drops and the child goes flying. And I think all of that would be remedied if there was a product that said, okay, we're addressing the requirement that there must be a flotation device for every passenger, and this one happens to be a car seat, and yes, it's going to have to go into a seat, and
Okay.
and I think they'll wrestle with that,
Sure.
and I would hope that those smarter than me who would be in charge of the finances and the marketing of it, etc., would make it a give back program for the airlines at point of sale. They do it, or the cruise lines, etc., to make it advantageous to them to see to it that their passengers put these babies in the best
Sure.
and most safest seat.
I think your video should go a long way in helping with that. And any young mother who is getting on an airplane, seeing that video, I think would want that baby seat.
I hope so, and I hope a wealthy mother would come forward and help us get to market.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What stage are you in with the business right now, and what are the challenges that you're facing at this time?
In about a minute and a half.
Oh, okay. Probably the biggest challenge is I don't really have a champion. I don't have a management team to come forward and champion the baby life seat through the funding circles to get to the angel investors or the large investors that would be willing to fund the conversion, because we've already created and tested the prototype, the conversion of that product, just converting it to the finished market-ready product. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm good at certain things, but there are people who've worked, this area who are, more skilled than myself, and my hope is to somehow attract those people.
Well, thank you, Tom, and we hope that one of our viewers and listeners will be interested in contacting you, doing a little due diligence, and maybe turn this thing into reality, because I know there's a lot of moms and grandmas out there that are just horrified to think about their baby being held in an airplane should it crash. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Next week, our guests will be Jane Sacchetti and Brian Kohut, and they're going to talk about tax planning. It's probably getting too late for this year, but in 2015 you want to get ahead of the curve. Things might be changing next year, and we want to get the breaking information. We hope you'll join us next week. As far as we're concerned, your money matters.